Welcome to another edition of the Plan Well podcast, hosted by owner and attorney of Cary Estate Planning, Paul Yokovitis.
All right, welcome everybody to the Plan Well podcast. This is episode 11, and today we have the honor of interviewing Kenzie Clark from Able Transition Consulting. Kenzie, how are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you doing today, Paul?
Good. Thanks so much for joining us. Kenzie, you're originally from outside Charlotte, but you've basically been in North Carolina aside from that stint at Kansas for your entire life, basically, right?
Yes, always a North Carolinian.
There you go. It's one of the few originals left in North Carolina. And you currently live in Raleigh with your husband, Alex, and
Yes.
but you went originally to App State for special education, and then you're one of only a few that have actually gone through Kansas's secondary special education and transition program in
Yes.
the state.
Yes, in the state of North Carolina, I don't know of
Anyone?
one other person, honestly.
Nice. And you had already been a special education teacher, and then you went back to grad school. Is that right?
Yeah, so I was a special education teacher with the Wake County Public School System, and kind of through my experience through teaching, as well as through my college experience with the Scholars with Diverse Abilities program at Appalachian State, I really saw the importance of transition, but then working in the school system, I saw a gap where no one was talking about really preparing for transition in a comprehensive way.
So you came out of the program at Kansas, having all of this new knowledge and perspective, and just saw the sort of a lack of readiness with Wake County and the teaching system to be able to roll out any of that. Is that right?
I mean, yes. And I think I was right. I went back and I was teaching, I was working with students, and I saw so many families coming to me and asking, all right, well, what's next?
Mm-hmm.
Once they're 18, 19, 20, even 16, 15, 14, just a lot of questions about the future.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, if you look at the IEP legally, it's required to have the transition goals, post-secondary education, employment, independent living as applicable. You've got to work on transition services, right? So teachers and educators are doing the best they can, and you're juggling so much already. And as a graduate of Appalachian State University, which I think is one of the best teaching schools in North Carolina, we had an incredible special education program. In total, I probably had 4 hours on transition my whole time at school.
Yeah.
And so you don't learn about the magnitude of transition and how complex and nuanced it is for every person. You kind of learn, all right, we got to give you these skills to graduate. But then once you're done, once you're 21 and you're out, we don't offer you anything else and any other services. And so I think seeing that within parents and students of like, all right, they don't know what's next. They don't know financially, legally, transportation, education. There's nothing that's going to support them. And so I stepped out in a lot of faith and said, I want to do something about this. And I want to ensure that adults can have high quality lives in the future. So that's pretty much why I started it.
Did you see that as kind of like a funding issue with the schools, or is it just sort of like a cognitive dissonance? They weren't aware of it and weren't really prepared to address
I would say that they are aware that transition is important, but the magnitude of really what transition encompasses isn't taught to special educators.
Right.
I think they do the best that they can. I do think it's also a funding issue, right? I had cohort individuals from Kansas who lived in the northeastern area, some in Kansas, some who were from the West Coast, and their school systems were small, extremely well funded. And so they had transition specialists who would come into the schools, work with an adult, child, and the family, helping create specific plans. They would help them understand the future, even talk about things like SSI, SSDI, talk about trust. But in our district, that wasn't happening. And then I looked and reached out to a lot of friends and teacher colleagues in North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, and I realized it's not happening in a lot of these states. And so, and no fault really to the system or to the teachers. I think it's a nuanced issue, right? Funding,
Sure.
People who are available and who have the training and the experience and the education. So I think it's multiple folds if you look at it from that perspective.
which is unfortunate because you see so much support in transition for kids going to college or kids going to the military or trade schools, but you don't see that same level of support for kids with special needs.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so you essentially said, you know what, somebody's got to do it. And, and I think I think you're coming up on an anniversary, right? for a year?
Yeah, August will be a year since I started.
Okay.
And then in September, I launched. So last September 2019 to October 2019, I did kind of like think tanks with families and kind of proved and began like, all right, this is what I'm thinking for the process. And from really about November onward, the manner of which we've been meeting with clients and working with clients has evolved, but I would say the base of it has pretty much stayed pretty consistent.
That's awesome. And so obviously within a year, things have even changed a lot for you as far as growth and what y'all are offering. And as with any new business owner, there's always pivots and iterations and that sort of thing. But what does Able Transition look like today?
So today it looks like me working with families as the transition specialist. Typically families and individuals will do either like big packages, really where we provide our comprehensive resource guide and then a unique person-centered plan for the individual moving forward. And so that person-centered plan is a pretty comprehensive and complex document that is kind of a path forward for families. And we talk about everything from finances, legal things they need to do, transportation, education, mental health, employment, savings, assets. We figure out and make plans for what is life going to look like in a couple of months, in a year, in 5 years from now, and how are you going to get there? What's the trajectory that's going to get you to those places? We have an occupational therapist working with us, and she works on an hour-by-hour basis with clients to help them with specific post-secondary needs, whether that's vocational, functional, social. She has her doctorate degree in OT, and she's really passionate about transition-aged individuals and adults and wanting them to have high-quality lives. So we work and we do that. We help individuals find jobs and access jobs. And I think it's been the most informative because we really want our clients to dictate what we do, right? So after every client works with us, we always make sure what was the best thing we did, what was the worst thing we did, what was the most helpful, what was the least helpful, because their input, right? This is about them. This is about the community. And so if we can let them steer our ship, we will be the best we can be because we're doing it for them. And so our clients have been our biggest advocates, our biggest fans. They give us all of our referrals. We're pretty much referral based 100%. And so we're really thankful to have the change that we've had, but it's really large in part due to our clients.
Yeah. And we've talked about obviously the transition from school to adulthood, but you work with kids younger than that and then adults as well. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So there are several adults that we've worked with who, they graduated, they had a 5-hour-a-week job at a local store, whether it was a grocery store or the local Target or the Whole Foods. And we really help them create a person-centered plan for their future because typically a lot of the families, they have a job, but they don't really think about, all right, the medical, how are we going to, get their medical needs met? How are we going to get their transportation needs met? What is their social life going to look like? Are they taking care of their mental health, their well-being? And then even for a lot of families, do they have a special needs trust, right? Are they making sure that everything is so that their benefits won't be in jeopardy, So we kind of talk through families about at that 30,000 foot level. And then for a lot of the older families who haven't had specific things like a trust in place, we'll refer them out to you guys and to other agencies that as we see fit. And then for younger individuals who are typically under 16, we look at where they are currently. We look at their strengths, needs, preferences, and we create a person-centered plan for them in school, kind of helping the family know also how to advocate in the school system for things that are going to be integral for post-secondary success. So one of those things being works-based learning. Works-based learning is a huge indicator of post-school success. And so whether that's in the school system, they're going out 2 times a week and they're working in the community, or their family gets them a summer internship, as long as they're getting real life generalized experience outside of the school system and outside of their home, they are 5 times as likely to have a job, to have a post-secondary education, some type of certificate, and then to make more money and to have just a higher quality life overall. So it looks different at every phase and stage. I would say our most integral clients is that 16 to 22 because they're in the middle of transition. And so those are the majority of our clients is between 16 and 22 years of age.
Got it. And now you've recently added an occupational therapist to the team. just within the last few months. Yeah.
Yes.
And how has that improved your offerings to your clients?
I think for our specific clients, it offers a lot because she's focusing on just transition services. And right, you have an individual who's graduated from high school. They're no longer getting anything from the school system, whether that's OT or speech.
Right.
And she can work alongside of that individual to really see, all right, here's your skill set level. Here's where you want to be, and let's get you there slowly. So it's very tailored to adulthood. It's really tailored to where do you want to work and how can we help you get to that place? What are your abilities too as well, right? In the school system, they're going to work on a wide variety of information, and the related services are there to help the individual children access the curriculum, right? Not necessarily specific skills for jobs, adulthood, having a conversation with your boss, right? Knowing how to interview well. Like those aren't necessarily things they're going to be working on. And so she's really able to offer that. And so a lot of clients are really excited that she's come on. Typically after they work with me and they get the person-centered plan, they're wanting to work alongside of her because she's able to kind of help meet some specific goals that the plan has laid out for them.
Got it. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And obviously with COVID over the last few months, a lot of your face-to-face meetings have probably changed and the service deliverables have probably changed. How has that really impacted your practice?
So I would say in March, we kind of saw a standstill. We had several active clients and everything kind of stopped. And a lot of clients didn't want to continue over Zoom, but we did offer Zoom. And so we had a handful of clients where we did meetings and consultative packages over Zoom. We had probably about 5 from April to late May. And then as June started and we started moving into the phases, phase 1 and phase 2, many people started to come back on our books. And so we've just started doing in-person meetings again, wearing masks, being safe, socially distancing. And we have a location near downtown Raleigh where we can meet with clients in person. I think that, the work we do is very collaborative, and it's really integral and pivotal to have the individual and the family present, fully present, right? Giving us information. We're working together to create this plan. And it can be very emotional for families as well. And so we find that especially the second time we meet when we're creating that plan, it can be a lot for the individual adult, for the family. Sometimes it's, they're crying from joy of like, wow, all of these things I've been worried about. Here's the plan now. All these things I've been thinking about. We have a plan. And so I think that it's really crucial for us that we have that personal connection with them, right? And so that's where COVID has kind of changed things, is online. It's just not the same in terms of collaborative skills and having the individual adult be comfortable with sharing over like a Zoom format. They don't always love, they kind of want to be in person. So we're excited that we're able to meet in person again with the safe CDC guidelines. But COVID definitely has impacted our business, but our goal is to continue to support and serve clients. I think that they see the need and they see that it's important and urgent. But as with a lot of families, people are being furloughed, right? People are being let go from their jobs, and we want to respect that and support them wherever they are. And so knowing that we're here at any time, we also have an online subscription service and a portal. It's a very low cost monthly service. So if families want to learn slowly on their own, that's an option that we are kind of, debuting out for families so that they can have some type of transition knowledge and growth in specific areas that they feel like they need support and understanding within.
That's great. Yeah. And obviously having a range of options is always preferable for people who have a range of needs. I know you work with a lot of kids who are in school currently, and COVID sort of impacted the stability of school and the supports and that kind of thing. How have you seen that impact as far as, kids going to, school from home and digital learning and not having that sort of daily structure and supports?
Yes. I think it's been very difficult for families. And just thankfully our clients are able to be really honest with us. Not having the support and the structures as well as the specific service delivery and their IEP, is really difficult, right? And when anyone's whole world is rattled, when our structure, when our schedules are off, it's so difficult. But then to try and explain to an individual who likes their structure, who likes rigidity, that everything's changed. No, we're not going back to school. No, you're going to stay home. You're not going to be with your educator. It's very difficult. It's difficult for the families. It's draining for them, right? They are already on all the time, but now they're on all the time, 24/7.
No respite. Yeah.
Having no respite, having to be teacher, parent, advocate, everything. But I think that it's important for families, and I've been telling clients just to give themselves a lot of grace during this time.
Right. Screen time's a little bit more okay right now.
Yes, it's okay, right? We're getting by. And I think the important thing is that they know they're not alone. There's a lot of people in the boat with them, but it can feel very isolating. And so, we've encouraged families to reach out to agencies and support groups as they need it. But I think it has been very difficult for a lot of people, for the adults, and then for the children themselves as well, right? Their whole world has just kind of gone upside down.
Yeah, it seems like years ago, but it's only been not even 4 months now.
It's a time warp right now.
Yeah, it's
It really is.
weird. Did you see efforts made by the school systems to try to make up for the lack of that physical attention, or was it basically like, well, we're remote now, sorry, we can't offer these services? Or
I think it was different in every district.
Got it.
So, right, like a bigger district, they're trying to do the best they can. They're showing up online every day. I think it also depended on the district and if they had tablets, if they had every child able to access internet, really, even. Because you have to think about the range of individuals, right, that a school system is serving. You're serving students who are homeless to students who are very well off. And so how do you meet every one of those people's needs? I think they tried their best. I know that in smaller school districts, I have some good friends who are in Western North Carolina and Tennessee. Because they're smaller, they were able to get routers to every home, right? They were able to get
That's awesome.
They were able to go by and drop off materials and check in on their students. And so I think it's different teacher to teacher or district to district. I think everyone's trying to do their best. I think it will be very interesting once districts roll out their plan for 2020 and 2021. It'll be very interesting to see kind of what's happening. But, right, the service delivery in the IEP, if you don't have a special educator in the room with you and you don't have related service working with you every week, because of the pandemic, it cannot be the same.
Right.
Unfortunately.
Right. Yeah, it is unfortunate. In your experience, obviously you've been open in this capacity with ABLE for almost a year now, but obviously even your experience as a special education teacher and educator and just a specialist generally, what are some general issues you see with clients with special needs family, things that people just don't know about or they're totally missing or getting wrong?
I think a lot of things, unfortunately. I think there's a lot of misinformation and miscommunication. I think, and generally, the social security system is difficult for families to navigate. So if a family doesn't have an agency or a specialist working with them and they go to apply for SSI and they get denied, which happens all the time, they won't apply again. They think, all right, it's not for us. We can't get it. Instead of knowing like that's probably going to happen and you've got to appeal it and you've got to keep moving forward.
Or they should never have applied. Like we see families apply when the kid's a minor and the parents are not even well off, but from a social security standpoint, they have too many resources and they think, well, they were denied when they were 12. So we're just going to always be denied. Yeah. Even though they could have been awarded on initial application on, the month after their 18th birthday. And it's just sort of frustrating process for sure.
Yes. I think that is a process that we see frustrates families. A lot of families, when we ask, do you have a special needs trust? They say, well, what is that? And I'm like, all right, you really need to call Paul. Or they'll say, we've got a will and they're a beneficiary and they don't know that that's going to affect their benefits. They also don't really know anything about the ABLE accounts for those saving. It can be their checking and saving account for their child. And especially when it comes to post-secondary, we know that a lot of families don't know that post-secondary options are out there for their children. Yeah. They think, all right, college isn't attainable. It's not accessible. They don't know about the inclusive opportunities we have in North Carolina. We've got 3 incredible universities, state universities, that offer inclusive programming. And there's several colleges that are working. We've got several community colleges that offer programs. So I think on that end, parents don't know what's available. Parents also, sometimes they might be 20 years old and they don't know what the innovations waiver is. They don't know that that's something they need to apply for. It's going to provide funding. You need it to have a job coach in the future. I think there's a lot of things. One of the biggest factors that I would say is that families don't know about specific agencies and how they can help.
Mm-hmm.
So they go to the school system, they trust their special education teacher, they graduate, and then they try to get their child a job as a family with their network. And a lot of times that comes up short. They don't know what to do. They can't get a job. They don't know that places like the Arc of the Triangle, the Autism Society are going to be there. They're going to be agencies that can support them. They don't know that they can have a job coach outside of high school, right? There's a lot of educators and job coaches in high schools, but when the time comes to leave, right, they don't know that, all right, there's other options outside of this. So I'd say there's a lot of things that families don't necessarily know about. So I think it's important to understand that there is a lot of change that will happen and that will come.
Mm-hmm.
And that you've got to be able to surround yourself with a large unit of people, right? We always say we try to be bridge builders.
Mm-hmm.
We are not a one-stop shop. We are going to refer you out to a lot of people and a lot of organizations, because it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to keep adults moving successfully into the future. And so I think that when you really start to look at the vast majority of transition, you see how complex and nuanced it is for each individual. I would say it depends on the family, it depends on their situation, but those are the typical things that we notice that families don't know about. And no one's ever heard of a person-centered plan.
Right.
No one's ever heard of planning and what that looks like and how that's going to benefit you and the child. And we had one client who about a week after we finished the person-centered plan, she's so wonderful. She called me crying and said, if I die, right, my sons are going to be able to pick this plan up and know where my other son is headed. They're going to know the steps they need to take. They're going to know where he wants to be and where I want him to be when it comes to transportation, housing, healthcare, finances, assets. It's all in one document. And so she was like, to have that peace of mind that, all right, I've got my special needs trust in place. I've got a person-centered plan. We know what's going to happen, is a weight off of her shoulders. And so I think what we try to bring to families, right, is a peace of mind. And that's our biggest goal and our hope that we can bring to the parents of the individuals.
Yeah, I think within our special needs resource community, there's so many providers that end up being more like specialists, and there ends up being just this lack of a one size or a one-stop shop. So that ends up being great if you can find those resources, but I think the biggest issue is navigating those resources.
Yes.
And so I know one of the big benefits for working with you is you've got your resource list, somewhat of like a matrix of different organizations, what they do, who they can serve, and that sort of thing. And that's available through your portal, right?
Yes. So the portal, the online subscription, is our resource guide. So if you work with us and you have our transition consultative package, you will get a copy, like a PDF in your inbox. It's about 40 pages long. But if you don't want to work with us, if now's not the best time, you can go on and subscribe and access all of that month by month. And we tell families you can cancel it at any time. You can learn as you want to. You can grow as you want to. You can find information and resources. Because everything is so complex and there's so many players, we kind of wanted to put it all on, you can't really put it all on one page, but all in one place for families to find and kind of wrestle through. I think, a mom told me a couple weeks ago, everything you've told me within this like package, I would have probably learned in like 4 or 5 years, my own. And so that's hard, right? Like,
yeah, it is. And the big thing too is what I'll find is a lot of inconsistent information, and it ends up being like a lot of anecdotal stories, like a mom's group or a Facebook group where it's like, my son had this or my daughter had this, so this is the way that it is, instead of having more of a deeper explanation of what the program can do or what the agency allows and those sort of things. So you end up like, I can't tell you how many people have come to our office with a total misunderstanding of what the innovations waiver is, or like what it covers, or whether you can apply for it as an adult, those sort of things, because of an anecdotal story from another parent. And it's not that anybody means, harm or they mean to get it wrong. It's just like they're just so confusing. And, a centralized resource like what y'all are providing is worth its weight in gold. I mean, without being an overstatement, it's true. And exactly what that mom told you is, some people will spend the entire length of their child's minority trying to navigate and figure out what's there. And new programs will pop up, or Medicaid regulations will change, or MCOs will shift, or Alliance or Cardinal or whoever's got your matter will say you're approved for this or not that. And that's an ever changing thing. And if there isn't somebody kind of quarterbacking that, it can be very easy to get lost. And so when I first started doing special needs planning, I thought for the longest time that a position like yours in service to the community, kind of sort of as like a quarterback through transition, but also as like a referral quarterback, was what was probably the most in demand but missing piece of the puzzle, because everybody has the thing that they do, but very, very few people took the extra step to actually try to coordinate resources or sort of try to demystify the different programs and what they can do. And I know like Arc of the Triangle has Community Navigator and that kind of thing, but not everybody's a member of Arc of the Triangle. Yeah. Or wants to be, right? It's not an organization that everybody wants to be a part of for whatever reason, but that sort of resource and it being so accessible just by being on your website, just part of your portal offering, is obviously low intimidation. It's not like they have to sit down and be across the table from you to get a handout or something like that. And again, it's worth its weight in gold. So kudos for providing that.
We want it to be accessible, right? I think that this world is already so confusing. And like you said, people have such nuanced examples and everyone has a different experience with the Social Security office, with how their guardianship goes. And so it's important to just kind of have an overview understanding versus an experiential understanding, because it's going to be so vastly different. And the information you get from one person is going to be different than you get from someone else.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's great information. And it's abletransitionconsulting.com, right? We'll put that in the show notes.
Mm-hmm. That's our website.
And then you just have a tab right on the front page that says portal and pricing, right?
Yep.
Perfect.
Just go to it. You can learn about it.
Great. We'll put that in the show notes for everybody to check out after we publish. All right. Now time for the hot seat. Time for the fun questions.
Great.
What show are you currently obsessed with?
Okay. So there's two right now that I'm like really loving. The first is Restaurants on the Edge.
Haven't heard of it.
You heard of it? I am obsessed with it. I absolutely love it. It's this trio team of like a restaurateur from California, and then an interior designer from Canada and a chef from Canada. And they literally go around the world. And they go around the world and they go to different restaurants that are struggling, that like for whatever reason. Yeah. And what I really love about it is that they don't just come in and say, this is what we want you to do. They learn about the culture. They learn about the local produce and the foods and like what is culturally, like what's the culture like for interior design. And they revitalize the restaurant based on the community that it's in. And I don't know, I'm obsessed with it. And it was crazy because I started watching it and I was watching an episode and they were like going to Costa Rica, and my husband and I have been to Costa Rica. We went there on our honeymoon, and they were like, we're in the Guadalajara region. I was like, oh, that's where we went on our honeymoon.
Yeah, that's cool.
And they're like, we're at this restaurant, The Lookout. And I was like, oh my gosh, we went there one night and it was terrible. The food was not good. We left, went back to our resort. Yeah, we went back to our resort and had a second dinner. Huh. And it was so funny, like to see the restaurant, but they revitalized it. And I told my husband, now we've got to go back. Like it's better. We've got to go back.
Maybe so that'll be your 1 year anniversary for Able.
Yeah, maybe. Well, I don't know.
What channel is that on?
It's on Netflix.
Okay.
It's on Netflix. And then I've been really into Dairy Girls on Netflix too. Have you heard of that? It's about Ireland in the 90s and the conflict and like what it's like to be a teenager in that time. I don't know. It's just a nice relief, from current situations to like kind of escape into a nice fun show.
Yeah, you're talking about like the Catholics versus Protestants and the IRA and all that kind of stuff?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Got it. Very cool. But both on Netflix?
Both on Netflix.
If you have a few hours to yourself, I know we were talking before we started recording about your yoga certification and whatnot. How are you spending your free time on the weekends?
Well, definitely I'm doing yoga. So I was supposed to be finished in May. This is like a year-long program, but because of COVID, I'll be done the last weekend of July. So I'm definitely doing yoga, hopefully teaching yoga soon on the weekends. My husband and I love to sit on our porch. We love to hike with our dog. And I love reading. I'm a big reader. So I'm probably hiking, doing yoga, reading, or spending time with my husband and my friends.
So next question will be a good one then. So what's the one book that you recommend the most?
Oh, see, this was really hard for me because in 2020, I've already read 34 books. So
wow.
To be like, what's one book you recommend is really hard. So listen, I've got 3.
Okay. All right. I'll allow it.
I had to think about it. Okay. So I've got nonfiction and fiction.
Okay.
So for nonfiction, The Body Keeps the Score is my favorite nonfiction book. It's incredible. I definitely recommend it. I recommend it even to my clients. So it is about how your body holds on to experiences, trauma, stress, and being a special education teacher and having certain experiences in the school system with students. And I've done care, and I've in the summers I've worked as a one-on-one. I've had certain experiences, and my body's definitely remembered experiences. And so I tell a lot of my clients, please read this book. It is so informative and helpful for you to take care of yourself, for you to understand your own body, and how even being the parent of a child with a disability comes with specific traumas itself. So I think that book is really important.
I'll have to check that out.
And then fiction, I've got 2.
Okay.
My all-time favorite book is Les Miserables.
Okay.
Read the unabridged version or read the abridged version if you don't want to read a lot of flowery language. And then my newer, not written a long time ago, is Pachinko. Have you heard of Pachinko?
I haven't.
It is a wonderful book. Pachinko, I love it. It's like a family narrative that takes place across generations, and it's wonderful. It's one of the best books I've ever read. So sorry, my one book turned into 3.
No, and that's great. Especially, the average interview that I do probably has read a 10th of the number of books that you've read in 2020. So none of these books
are my 2020 books, but these are all-time favorites.
Yeah, right. Well, obviously 2020 is probably not an anomaly for you either. I'd imagine you're probably reading a couple dozen a year.
Yes. Grad school, the number decreased.
Sure.
But typically it's around 50 books every year.
I just started reading Measure What Matters. It's a business professional development book, but it's about Google and Intel, and they use a concept called OKRs, their objectives and key results. And so it's kind of like measuring key performance indicators, but it's a little bit more depth and about outcomes rather than actual data. Really good.
I have to write that down.
I know last time we talked, I told you about traction too.
Oh, my husband is a big traction person too.
Yeah, traction is probably a twice a year book for me.
Really?
Yeah. All right. Since we're on a podcast, what are your 3 favorite podcasts?
Ooh, I just finished listening to Dolly Parton's America.
Nice. How was that?
And I loved it. Have you heard of it? It was incredible. It was it was not funny, but I was like, Dolly Parton's America, that's funny. I've listened to Dolly Parton growing up, being from North Carolina. She's from Tennessee. The podcast is incredible. I really loved it. And then
you did some children's book story time stuff during COVID that we tuned into.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so glad I didn't know that. It's like an interviewer whose father was a doctor and ended up meeting Dolly Parton in Nashville for some reason and treating her. And they kindled a friendship. And then his son, who's a reporter, kind of took an interest in her and how he talks about how Dolly Parton is a unifier, like people who are very different, lots of different people, different backgrounds, all love Dolly Parton. And he was like, I want to know why. And so then he interviews her and learns all about her life. It was fascinating. So
it's like a series rather than sort of an ongoing thing.
Yeah, it was. I think it was just one season. I'm on the last episode right now. It's great. I also love, there's a podcast called The Place We Find Ourselves. And it's this really awesome, he's like a counselor therapist. He's just very wise. And I love neuroscience and trauma and the body. I love all of that. And so that's been a podcast that I enjoyed. And then The Office Ladies. Have you heard of that?
Yes.
Yeah, I love The Office. One of my all-time favorite shows. I could watch that show at any time, any day. Yeah. So I love hearing the behind the scenes. It's super fun.
Yeah, I like that they took them in order too, instead of sort of just going the most popular episodes first and that kind of thing. I've been listening to, so there's a podcast called Slow Burn.
Slow Burn. What is that about?
And it's by Slate, the magazine or online magazine, but they have 4 seasons, and it was originally about, let's see, what was the first season? So the most recent one's on David Duke and like his rise to, I guess, fame and infamy from, the 80s and 90s basically. But season 3 was about Biggie and Tupac. And so it's sort of like a true crime kind of thing.
Okay, cool.
Like a deep dive investigative journalism sort of situation.
So all season 3 is just about the whole Tupac and Biggie.
Exactly.
Is he still alive?
Yeah, west side, east side. Yeah, it was very well done. And it's not one of those like, glorifying gangster rap or anything like that. It was just really well done reporting and journalism. Ultimately, I think that's more of a solved crime than people realize, but it's still pretty cool to get down into the details. And then Dateline, like I'm just a huge Dateline junkie. Yeah. And if you listen to the podcast, there's like no commercials, just 45 minutes long.
So you're
and that's usually how long I work out for. So I'll just pop on a Dateline episode, blow through it, and there's usually 3 or 4 a week. So it's pretty nice.
So you like the true crime, getting into investigative, what's going on?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's usually, personal development stuff like lawyer podcast, business podcast, that kind of thing. Comedy. So, stuff like, let's see what's on the podcast feed. Fighter and the Kid. It's a couple comedians. Your Mom's House. Joe Rogan. A few random ones. And then there's like, straight up law firm ones, like there's one called Lawsome.
Yeah. Lawsome.
Lawyerist, Maximum Lawyer. I mean, there's plenty. And then there's true crime. Those are the three
Those are your
types.
3.
That's
it.
That's
awesome.
Now I know we talked about abletransitionconsulting.com for your subscription plan, the portal and whatnot. Where else can our listeners find you online?
So we're on Instagram, Facebook at Able Transition, and we just recently started a Twitter. So nice. Got that going too.
Jumping into the Twitter cesspool, huh?
I mean, I don't really know how much I'm on there.
Right.
But the girl who manages our social media, she's great and is engaged. So we just started that, but that's where you can find us. Our website also has information about our services, what we offer, client testimonials as well, which I know are important for people to read. So yeah, we're you can find us kind of anywhere right now in this sphere. Awesome. We're on LinkedIn too.
Perfect.
All the places.
Kenzie, thanks so much for joining us. It was a pleasure having you.
Of course, thanks for having me.
If anybody is looking to meet up with Kenzie, you can go to abletransition.com or at abletransition on any of the socials.
Yeah, Kenzie, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks so much. Enjoy the rest of your week.
That's it for this week's episode. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share. We'll see you all next time.